guys, and welcome back to the channel. Okay, so today, a bit of an interesting one. I've recently upgraded my primary camera, so I'm filming on the R7 right now, but I recently sold my Canon EOS R, and I recently did a video about some of the pros and cons of why you might want to consider the EOS R in 2024. I'll link to that video in the description. But for me, I eventually realized that I needed to move my primary camera up to a full frame, a newer body. Now, through a weird series of events, I ended up owning both the R6 and the R6 Mark II at the same time for a short period of time. But I just want to give my impressions of the R6 versus the R6 Mark II and whether it's worth upgrading, because I found it really interesting as somebody coming from the R, having the chance to shoot the R6 for about a month or so and then eventually upgrading straight to the R6 Mark II, and why I did that and why that might or might not make sense for you. Okay, so I did upgrade my camera, and I did buy a second-hand Canon EOS R6 and got the camera, and I've just got to say that I absolutely love that camera. The R6 is just a beautiful camera. As soon as I got it, I felt back at home. The grip felt nice, not as big as the EOS R, but it felt great in the hand. All the buttons and dials felt really solid, and it just felt like a better version of something like the EOS R. Like, it felt like a professional camera. I had all my dials back, my buttons, I had my 3 dials, and I was loving it. As soon as I got the camera, I stuck an SD card in it, went outside. It was the afternoon, and I shot a couple of shots of my dog running around and my son. And I was immediately blown away by the dynamic range, how much better the dynamic range was, and just how great the colors looked. I was a little bit worried coming from the EOS R, where I have really grown to love the rendition of that sensor, and I wasn't sure how I would feel about these files. I obviously researched it extensively, but until you have the camera and you shoot the camera, you don't know. But the files look gorgeous. I was worried also 20 megapixels. Like, I haven't shot a 20 megapixel camera in a long time, nearly a decade it's been since I've shot a camera that's not been over like 24 megapixels or 24 megapixels and above. But I found the images to be super sharp, super detailed, and just great. Now, when I had this camera, I thought 20 megapixels is great for shooting weddings, portraits, my thing, events, but I thought this is going to be a camera that's going to limit me. But then I thought, look, why not just go out and test the camera? So I took it out, and I'll link the video down below where I took it out and compared it to the R7, shooting some landscape photography, and I was blown away. I really did prefer the files of the R6, even though it only had 20 megapixels. I still found there was a massive amount of detail in the image. I really loved the way the colors were rendered, the dynamic range of the sensor. Just everything looked really good. Now, I also had the chance to take the camera out as it was the holidays with my son, and just shoot some action. And I was interested to see just how good the autofocus system would be. I have the R7, and even though it's great, sometimes the autofocus does mess with moving subjects. It's a well-known fact. I'm not going to go over it in this video, but I was curious to see how the R6 autofocus would do tracking people, and man, this thing just would not miss. At the start of shooting, I accidentally had the shutter speed set a little bit low, and even those shots came out looking great. The autofocus on the R6 is just amazing. Even now, 2024, I know the camera's a few years old, but my God, the autofocus, it just locks on and it just will not let go. So if you're looking at this camera and you're worrying about the autofocus being an older autofocus system, I upgraded it to the latest firmware, and yeah, bang on every time. It was just ridiculous. It was ridiculous. So on that, I would recommend, if you do buy an R6, upgrade the firmware immediately. Now, if it's an older version of the firmware, it's probably going to take, the upgrade is going to take a while. I can't remember what version it was, but I upgraded to the latest version, and I had a little bit of a heart attack just because the update took so long. But after I did that, I found that some of the issues that I was having beforehand, like the camera seemed to freeze up a little bit, and I think that's an issue with, I was using 2 different speed SD cards in the camera. But when I upgraded, all those problems disappeared, and I was able to shoot the camera with no issues at all. So if the R6 was so great, why did I then return the camera and buy an R6 Mark II? Well, basically I bought the camera secondhand off eBay, and there were some cosmetic issues that weren't fully disclosed or described in the description, and I wasn't very happy. Now, I tried to discuss this with the seller and work out a fair price, because at the time I paid a fairly great price, because he said that it was in basically new condition, and I couldn't find a new R6 in Australia for a price that made sense comparatively to the R6 Mark II. Now, we couldn't come to a resolution, and so I did have to return the camera. And when I returned the camera, I was super sad, because like I said, I really do love that camera. It's a camera I would recommend to literally anyone if you're shooting portraits, fashion, if you're shooting action, weddings. This is a killer camera if you can get it for the right price. Now, here in Australia, the prices are, I think, a little bit overinflated. They're going for around $2,500, which I think is too much for this camera, considering its age. But if you can get one for a good price, this is a killer camera. So when I returned the camera, at that time here in Australia, there was a big sale going on. It was the holidays, and the R6 Mark II was selling for, with Canon's cashback thing they were running, it was just under $3,000. Now, here in Australia, we get a 5-year warranty when we buy a Canon camera, and for that long-term investment, for spending $800 more than I'd paid for the R6, it didn't make sense to me not to upgrade, and that's what I did. Rather than trying to look around for another R6 Mark I, I did upgrade to the R6 Mark II. Now, was it worth it? Is it that much of a better camera? It's really going to depend on you and what you're shooting. Now, I have gotten much more into shooting video in the last 6 months, and I will say that if you're shooting video, even though the quality of the video from the R6 is great, I do believe that it's worth upgrading to the R6 Mark II. The overheating issues are real, and definitely an issue if you're shooting long form 60p, or even if you're just shooting a lot of small clips 60p. But that to me wasn't the big decider. One thing for me is actually the microphone on the camera. Now, when I bought the R7, one thing that I immediately noticed is how much better the audio quality if you're just using the on-camera microphone is, and that's just because they've moved the microphone position from right next to the lens, which is the stupidest position on earth, to above the camera. And I was blown away at how much better the sound quality is when you do that. And I've been impressed with the microphone from the R7, and when I went to shoot video on the R6, that's the one thing I noticed. I was like, what is that annoying sound? I realized it was the lens focusing, okay, which is something that I don't really notice shooting on the R7, and it's something that you won't notice shooting on the R6 Mark II, because it also has the digital hot shoe and the microphone has been moved. Okay, now that's something that may not be big to you, but for me, who does a lot of run and gun stuff, I love having that microphone where it's got audio that I can actually use, rather than having to stick something stick a microphone on top of there, and maybe I'm dumb, I don't know, but I love just having something even simpler. So if you shoot now, that may or may not be a big thing for you. For me, I also like the idea that I've got the digital hot shoe there that I can use if I want to upgrade to something like the Zoom connection that you can put onto these new Canon digital smart shoes. I think they're called digital hot shoes. I don't know, but that was one of the selling points for me. Now, obviously, you got a lot more customizability with the custom modes and in the R6 Mark II. Now, lots of people made a big issue of the R6. You had to move the dial around and go from stills here and turn it to get to video. Well, I think that's just really facetious, to be honest, because the way I set it up was I went into custom mode 3 and I set that as my movie mode, and then right next to that I have my stills. So with a click like that, I could go from stills to video. And sure, you don't have as many options, like you don't have like all the different stills and camera settings on the 3 custom modes, but it's really not an issue if you just take a minute to think about how you're setting up the camera. I think that was one issue where people made a lot to do about nothing, and it is a real issue if you're a heavy video shooter. But for me, it was never an issue. I did use the camera for video and the R6, and I loved it. But is the R6 Mark II better? Yeah, it just is. It just is. For video. Now, why you might want to choose the R6? Well, it's price. Basically, if you can get a deal on this camera is great. Like this isn't like a terrible camera. Don't let people tell you that. If you are primarily a photo shooter, I think this might even be a better camera. Like if you can get a good price on it, I just really love the experience of using it. Even now, like I'm thinking, like if I ever I'm trying to think of scenarios where I can be able to justify like having 2 full frame cameras again, which I probably can't, but I just really love the camera. I think if I had the option of buying the R6, I can't, here in Australia, we don't have the Canon refurbished program, and we don't have, there were no sellers that were selling the R6 Mark I new for a reasonable price. But I think if I could have gotten that, I might have gone that option. Okay, if the price difference hadn't been so close. So don't let anyone tell you that the R6 is a bad camera or it's dead now that the R6 Mark II has come out. It's just nonsense. If you've got an R6 and you're happy with it, man, stick with it. You know, if it's giving you what you need, stay with the camera. I would. If I'm still sad I had to return it, to be honest. Now, is the R6 Mark II great? Yes. Is it worth the price of the upgrade? Well, if you can get a deal on it like I did, I think it is. Does it offer more features and more options, especially for the video side? It certainly does. I don't think it offers that much of an advantage in terms of stills photography. Now, obviously, you're getting a bit of a resolution bump, and do the files look fantastic? Yes, they do. Do they look that much better than the R6 Mark I files? Personally, I don't think they do. I'm sure people would argue about that, but I've owned both the cameras. I own the R6 Mark II, and I'm telling you that the R6 is definitely like not steps and steps behind. Like it might be half a step behind, maybe. But you've got to remember that that's a camera that has the 1DX Mark III sensor inside it, and that's like a $8,000 DSLR. So I think it's important to keep things in perspective when you're looking at cameras and options. So that's been my impressions as someone that's been on this weird journey of upgrading their camera. I would really recommend either of these cameras, either the R6 Mark I or the R6 Mark II. It depends on your budget, where you are in the world. If you get this from like a Canon, if you get the R6 Mark I Canon refurbished, I think that's a great option. Or if you can get the R6 Mark II and you've got the money and you're a heavy video shooter, that's also a great option. I don't think you can really pick a bad camera between the two of them. They're just so good. They really are. They're just we live in such a great time where we're so lucky to have cameras like these. You know, as someone that came from shooting like a 60D 10 years ago, yeah, this is there's not much to complain about now. So that's my personal experience. I hope that helped you make your decision if you're looking at buying an R6 or an R6 Mark II. And yeah, that's it for me. See ya.